Hi there, meteorologist Ed Valley here. South American update for you. Happy Tuesday. Hope your long weekend was great. I'm going to use this video as kind of a state of the union, so to speak, with respect to South America because everything's in flux right now. If you had told me on January 1 what was the sentiment in South America, I would have told you Central Brazil, great, nice and wet, not too hot. Southern Brazil, hit or miss. Some good rain, some areas struggling, like Rio Grande do Sul. And then in Argentina, I would say generally too dry, too warm, but nothing crazy, right? Well, then the last 2 weeks have happened. And that was hot and dry in a lot of places here in southern South America, including most of Argentina. So the result here, this is a look at the last 30 days of precipitation compared to normal. You notice a lot of Central Brazil, especially Mato Grosso do Sul, Mato Grosso is doing fine. Goiás, you're doing fine. But notice, what do we see here in Mato Grosso do Sul and Paraná? We notice there's some areas that are doing okay, but there are others that, frankly, have seen below normal rainfall by a pretty significant margin. Now, moving that southward, there's two things that stand out to me, okay? One, this only goes through Sunday morning, so it does not include the rainfall that has fallen in a lot of Argentina. But leading into that situation, you notice Cordoba, really dry. I mean, 20% of normal rainfall. Even down south, it's 60% of rainfall. So it has been very dry here in Rio Grande do Sul, another bullseye right over you guys. So it's been a tough go. I'm curious to see what these maps look like in 2 days, but for now, it's been a tough go. And looking at the last 10 days of temperature dating back to the 7th of January, we've been well above normal. As we've known, this heat verified pretty close to expectation, cooler than the GFS, a little bit warmer than the European, but the results still for area wide, okay? Area wide. Actually, I'm going to zoom it in to see if I can get a better estimation there. There we go. Area wide. You see that it's a pretty significant 6 degree Celsius anomaly. That's about 10 or 12 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. You get that during the historically hottest month of the year, yeah, that's going to cause some problems, and that's what we're seeing here so far. So I wanted to just expand on the precipitation aspect real quick. This is from the USDA, looks at major corn production, which is 80 or more percent of the total production for the country for Argentina. And this is plotting rainfall over time since the beginning of September. Red line is this year, black line is normal, yellow line was last year. Last year, we know, was very dry. We're approaching that level right now. We're basically there. But I would argue that in the coming weeks, we'll probably recover a little bit. So you could argue in Argentina, it's similar to last year. Although, we started off a little bit better pre-planting, and it's been a slow burn, no pun intended, with respect to the decrease in quality and amount of rainfall across the region. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, up in, digging a little deeper, you notice Buenos Aires has been the driest area. Up in Rio Grande do Sul, same deal. We've approached 2021 levels of dryness now, and we're surpassing them. If the rain does not verify here this week, which there is some outside risk that it doesn't, that's not a good situation down there. I know it's only 5% of total corn production, but it's a lot more in first crop corn, which needs to be mentioned as well. And then up north, you notice most of Mato Grosso is doing just fine. Much wetter than normal, much wetter than last year. And then finally in Paraná, similar to Rio Grande do Sul, we had a great start to the season, but notice the slow degradation, and now we're pretty much right at what we were in 2020. We do have rain in the forecast, which should hopefully allow 2021, 2022 to kind of follow the similar path that we saw last year with an increase as we get into the beginning of February. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But again, the comparisons are starting to show up here, which is a different view than we had, 2 months ago before this dry risk really got going. Speaking of dry risk, well, here's the last 72 hours of precip. And again, I've got a few questions on this, rightfully so. These are estimates. A lot of the time they overdo the amounts here in heavier thunderstorms because it's a satellite interpretation and it basically uses cloud top temperatures to assume amounts of rainfall, which is tough to do. But you notice the area from Cordoba to Rosario to Buenos Aires right to Montevideo did very well. Again, maybe they didn't get 6 inches like this map says, but they probably did see 1 to 4 inches of rain, which is tremendous. Now, you notice southern Rio Grande do Sul got some rain in eastern areas, but not a lot of north central. And unfortunately, when you look at exactly what Rio Grande do Sul is, you notice a lot of those crops are grown in the northwest part of the state, right? So when you see this, you notice the northwest did not get a lot of precip. So we need more rainfall in this part of the world, and we'll see how it works out over the coming days. Now I want to get into the actual forward-looking talk, because moving forward over the next 10 days, the European is great in Argentina. It is pretty decent in Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. But again, notice in the northwest, it's less versus further south, and most of the production is north. Now, the GFS in the same time frame, much drier here in southern Brazil, which is a little concerning, right? But we've talked about the issues the GFS has had over the past few weeks, and it continues to lean that way generally. And again, I'm not saying this is a great pattern in southern Brazil over the course of the next week by any stretch. I think most of this activity is in Argentina through the weekend. Okay, now here's the look at amounts just through Sunday. Look at the bullseye in Argentina. Notice not a lot in Rio Grande do Sul, only spotty in the rest of Brazil, which we'll take. That's fine. But when you look at the 5 to 10 day rain, notice it's a lot wetter in southern Brazil on the European. However, you go to the GFS model, you notice it's a little bit more spotty. The answer most likely lies in between. So my hunch is that the GFS model needs to add some precipitation here, and the European may be a little bit too wet, and especially with respect to the exact coverage of some of this rainfall. You know, the rains rarely fall as uniformly as they're showing up on here. So I would take the under on the European, but take the over on the GFS model. And some of the reasoning for that is pretty simple with respect to the MJO. We're in phase 8. We're coming out of it. Typically, there is a lag. So, you know, we might be out of phase 8 tomorrow, but we might be feeling the effects for, 5 to 7 days. And then it looks like we're going to be in phase 7 for the foreseeable future. And this may actually come back into phase 8 into the early part of February. It's a tough call. So what does that mean? Well, we know January phase 8 is wet in Argentina. We're seeing that clear as day right now. But look at phase 7. That would organically take that rain in Argentina and start to press it northward into southern and central Brazil. And then as you look at phase 7, you see the same idea in February. Phase 8 in February, also kind of on the wetter side in Argentina. So what am I getting at here? Well, what I'm getting at is I think we're starting to see that evolution happen on the European data. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to look at 5-day precipitation versus normal. So the 5 to 10 day, quite wet, as we know, which takes us right through about the 28th of January in Argentina. Drier to the north. Now look at the 10 to 15 day. I'm going to go day by day. So the 6 to 11, 7 to 12, 8 to 13, 9 to 14, you can really start to see it. And then 10 to 15, you really start to see it as the rain goes from here to up here. That is a function of phase 7 MJO, which does make sense to me. Now, you look at the GFS. The GFS is telling me to go, well, pick your insult here with respect to that thinking. And the Canadian actually kind of mirrors the European, because look, the evolution here, you can see day to day brings that rain further north. You see that? And by day 15, the 10 to 15 day, the rain is solidly in southern Brazil. So all of this is to say, I do believe we are going to be pretty wet in Argentina at least through day 10, which is the 28th of January. After that, we likely start to see the impact of that MJO wave re-amplifying, which would over time lead to some drier risk to the south. And we're seeing that on our European weeklies right now. Here's the look in the 16 to 30. You see that phase 7 influence. Wetter in southern Brazil, maybe still some dryness in central Brazil. We'll see how that works out. And then a drier period potentially here to start the month of February in Argentina. So all in all, if these rains occur in Argentina this week and then in southern Brazil next week, I think we're going to be pretty well watered with respect to where we could have been otherwise, right? So the risk is still there. We still need to verify these rains, but I think things are, at least the bleeding is stopping down to the south, and we'll see how southern Brazil fares here next week, which will be a real driver in the overall sentiment. So that's what we got for you. Have a great Tuesday, and we'll talk to you again here soon.